Hello! Today I'd like to talk about another public event that's worth your time. That's Moonshine Jamborie. If you haven't watched the first video in this series, the one about Radiation Rumble, you should consider watching it first if you're not familiar with concepts like tagging, because I discuss a number of basics about events. Moonshine Jamborie, like the name says, takes place at a moonshining operation. It's another siege situation, but this time you defend 3 stills scattered at the edges of the compound. The event says it's for level 50 characters, but just like Radiation Rumble, there's usually lots of high level players. This event is a special reward of improving your reputation with the Raider faction, plus a few unique items. The goal is primarily to defend the stills, but there's also the option of gathering Gulp of Venom to get better rewards. The event doesn't start until you speak to the robot behind the bar. It's important that you don't start the event too early. You should give other players plenty of time to arrive. You have around 5 minutes to do that, and after that you will have another minute to light the bonfire on the back of the truck. Then the event proper will start, but if you fail to speak to the bar robot or light the bonfire before the timer expires, the event will fail. The stills are next to the rock formation, next to the container, and next to the shed. If you have a jetpack, one tactic is to get on top of the buildings, and you'll basically be safe because most enemies will melee. But if you're on foot, just like I was for the longest time, then another good spot is on top of the fence next to one of the stills. You need to go around this building and jump onto the roof from the rear. And then onto the fence. There's 4 waves of enemies. There's a short pause in between, and each wave will have stronger and more numerous enemies. They'll spawn outside the perimeter and make a beeline for the stills. There's a variety of them, but you should expect gulpers and ghouls to make up the bulk of the enemies. If you haven't fought gulpers before, be mindful that the toxic ones will leave clouds of poison when they die. It's important to have either resistance, or make sure to have plenty of stim packs to heal with. The higher tier players will again do the bulk of the killing, and beginner players should again focus on tagging enemies. Molotovs are great in this mission because enemies tend to cluster around the stills. Usually you only fully cover one still, but there's often enemies that leak through, so it's not a bad idea to keep an eye on the other stills. It's particularly important to make sure to enable pacifist mode, because there's often at least a few players on the ground using melee or looting. The optional goal is to collect Venom. At first you need 30, but overall you'll need 60 total. The tub is located in front of the bar robot. A big issue in this event is that the Venom can only be collected by the player that killed the Gulper. If the players doing the bulk of the killing forget to, or don't bother filling the tub, then there's nothing anybody else can do. So if you're one of those high level players, make sure to do the optional objective. I'm using an explosive minigun, but any weapon that has decent range will be useful. But if you're just going to cover the one still, then something like a flamer or melee works just as well. Make sure you have enough ammo though. My minigun can easily go through several thousand rounds. This event doesn't really provide ammo to compensate. There's someone who's gone AFK. I had a good laugh when I saw some naked player just standing there. Once you fulfill the optional goal, then it's just a matter of staying off the ground and killing gulpers.
I don't think I've ever seen the tub so full. You've really outdone yourself.
The last wave can be pretty hectic. Now there's so many enemies that it's likely that all the stills will be under attack. So keep an eye out and don't hesitate to use all your firepower. Don't forget to thank the other players. If you win the event, you'll get reputation with the Raider faction. There's daily quests that also give you reputation, but nothing gives you as much as this event. It looks tiny in this video, but that's because I'm just about to hit the maximum tier. The reason why you want reputation is that if you finish the quest lines with them, the Raiders and Settlers have a vendor who sells plans for special items like the Gauss shotgun and Gauss miniguns for gold bullion. Accessing the best items requires maximum tier reputation. There is an alternative vendor called Minerva that sells the same plans at a discount, but she's only available for short periods and her inventory changes, so you might have to wait a bit to get the items you want. If you happen to have a negative reputation with raiders, this event is also the only way to get it to the point where raiders won't attack you on sight if you travel to their base. Make sure to go around and loot near each of the stills. The last few waves often have a good number of legendary enemies, and you'll pick up a few from this final looting. After events like this, you might see people dump 1-star legendaries. Moonshine Jamborie does provide you with a workbench, but there's no stash by default. That's why people choose to dump low value legendaries that might be weighing them down. The AFK player will get the experience from Gulpers getting killed plus the event rewards. It's not a bad bonus just for standing around. There's the workbench at the shed behind one of the stills. You always get a Gulper Smacker as part of this event. Sometimes it's legendary. It gets double damage against Gulpers. The event also gives you some moonshine. If you let it ferment into vintage moonshine, it gives you another 100% extra damage with the Gulper Smacker. But other than using it for memes at this event, the Smacker is still not very useful compared to heavy weapons or even chainsaws. The moonshine is pretty good as an alcoholic drink though. Make sure to scrap everything, then check the junk tab again and manually scrap anything you don't want to keep. An incidental reward for this event is that you'll pick up tons of Gulper innards. This time I only got 80, but it's not uncommon to get over 100. You can cook it for experience, keep some for eating, and sell the rest. If you apply charisma buffs like the magnetic personality perk before selling, you'll get a few hundred caps at least from NPC vendors. There's also a good chance that you have leftover Gulper Venom. You can keep it and let it rot for fertilizer, but otherwise you should dump it. You're very likely to be over encumbered by this point, so dump any ammo that you don't use. Then grenades, food, chems, and lastly low value legendary items. Hopefully that will allow you to fast travel. Moonshine Jamborie is one of the better events to participate in, even as a low level player. It's one of the best ways to improve reputation with the Raider faction. There's a decent amount of legendaries to be had, and you get lots of meat. If you're able to get above ground, you can play it at very little risk and it becomes a turkey shoot. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.